The morning sun rose over the dusty plains of Montana, spilling golden light across endless acres of land owned by one of the richest cowboys in the state, Ethan Cole, a man known for his wealth, power, and mysterious silence. Ethan had earned his fortune through cattle, oil, and relentless hard work. Folks in town called him the Millionaire Cowboy, not because of his money, but because even with all his riches, he still rode his horse at sunrise, tended his ranch hands, and carried himself like a man who'd started from the bottom. But behind that strong jaw and calm gaze was a loneliness no one could see, a silence that grew louder every night when the wind blew across his empty ranch house. Ethan had no family, no kin, no wife, no children, just memories of a childhood he never talked about. One chilly evening, while checking the far side of his property near the old river bend, Ethan saw smoke rising from a small log cabin he didn't remember building. It stood hidden behind the tall cottonwood trees, leaning slightly to one side, with its roof patched in a dozen different places. Curious, he rode closer and found an old couple working near the barn in a frail man with trembling hands chopping wood and a kind-faced woman hanging clothes on a line. Their clothes were worn, their boots torn, yet their faces glowed with peace. "Evening, folks," Ethan greeted, dismounting his horse. "Didn't know anyone lived this far out." The old man straightened up, wiping sweat from his brow. "We've been here a long while, son. Name's Henry, and that's my wife, Martha. Sorry if we're on your land. We've been looking after this place since before we knew who owned it." Ethan smiled. "Ain't no harm done. I own the land now, but if you're taking care of it, I'll make it official. How about I pay you both a fair wage to watch over this area? Make sure no poachers or drifters mess around." The couple looked at each other, surprised. Martha's eyes softened with gratitude. "You'd do that for us, sir?" "We're old, can't do much heavy work anymore." Ethan nodded. "You've kept the place alive. That's worth more than money." From that day, Ethan began paying them every month. He'd ride out to their cabin, bring supplies, and share a cup of coffee while listening to their quiet laughter. They told him stories of the land, the storms, and the children they used to take in for a while. Ethan assumed they meant family and maybe distant kin who visited once or twice. But there was something strange about that cabin. Every time he went there, he saw tiny shoes by the door, old toys under the porch, and once he swore he heard a child's laughter from inside the barn, though the couple never had any children of their own. Months passed and winter came hard. One snowy evening, Ethan noticed that Henry and Martha hadn't come to town for supplies in weeks. Worried, he saddled his horse and rode through the storm to their cabin. When he arrived, the sight froze him to the core. They see snow-covered roofs sagged under the weight, and the windows flickered with dim candlelight. Inside, Martha sat by the fire, tears in her eyes, holding Henry's hand. The old man lay weak, coughing, barely conscious. "Henry's sick," Martha whispered. "He's been like this for days." Ethan rushed to help, bringing medicine and blankets from his saddlebag. He stayed the night tending the fire, feeding Henry soup and trying to keep the cold from stealing his last breath. As he sat there, he noticed something he'd never seen before. A small wooden door behind the curtain near the fireplace. It was half open, and from inside came the faint sound of children talking, or maybe echoing memories. "What's that room?" Ethan asked quietly. Martha hesitated, tears glistening. "That's where they stay." "They?" Ethan frowned. "Who?" Before she could answer, a soft voice called from the room. "Granny, we're hungry." Ethan stood confused. He stepped closer and opened the door. Inside was a small, dimly lit room filled with 8 children, some sleeping on straw beds, others reading by candlelight. Their faces were thin but clean, their eyes bright with innocence. When they saw Ethan, they didn't flinch and they smiled. "Who are you, mister?" one little girl asked. Ethan was speechless. He turned to Martha. "You didn't tell me." Martha's voice broke. "They're orphans, Ethan. Children nobody wanted. Some left at our door, some from the church. We've been taking care of them all these years. We couldn't let them die in the streets." Ethan's chest tightened. He looked at those kids, shivering, yet smiling, and then something inside him cracked open. All his wealth, his acres of land, his cattle, none of it meant a thing compared to what he was seeing now. This wasn't just an old couple's home. It was a sanctuary, a place of love in a world that had forgotten what love meant. Henry stirred weakly. "We didn't want pity, son. We just wanted to give him a chance, a home, like we never had." That night, Henry passed away quietly in his sleep, with Martha holding his hand and Ethan sitting silently by the fire. The next morning, as snow fell over the land, Ethan buried the old man near the cabin under a lone oak tree. The children stood beside him, small hands clutching each other, tears freezing on their cheeks. Martha wept silently but smiled through her grief. After the funeral, Ethan sat on the porch staring at the horizon. The wind was biting cold, but his heart burned with something new, purpose. He turned to Martha. "This land, this cabin, it's yours. And those kids, they're mine now too. I'll build them a home, a school, a life. They'll never go hungry again." Martha's lips trembled. "You'd do that, Ethan?" He nodded, eyes steady. "I've spent years building wealth for myself. Maybe it's time I build something that actually matters." Within months, Ethan transformed the entire valley. He built a ranch school, hiring teachers, doctors, and caretakers. The old cabin became the heart of it all, a symbol of kindness and hope. Word spread across Montana about the Orphans house built by the Millionaire Cowboy. People came from towns and cities to see it, not because of its beauty, but because of its story. Every Sunday, Ethan would ride into the yard on his horse, the children running to greet him, their laughter echoing through the valley. He'd tell them stories, teach them to ride, and remind them of one thing Henry once said: "It ain't the blood that makes a family. It's the love that stays when the world walks away." And in that laughter, in those small hands that once had nothing but now had everything, Ethan Cole found what he'd been missing all his life: a family, a reason to smile, and peace that money could never buy. So if you ever pass through Montana and see a big ranch with children's voices floating on the wind, remember this story of a cowboy who thought he was rich until he found out what true wealth really meant.